Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Hi, hello, my name is Loey, and welcome to the very first video in this new series we're kicking off called Terror Time. There are so many stories that I want to chat with you guys about, whether they are sent in by subscribers like you or just creepy stories from across the internet that don't necessarily have many like visual components to them. You guys always talk about watching my videos to fall asleep or maybe just listening to them in the background while you clean your house, and our Terror Time videos are going to be perfect for that. I'm going to tell you a story, whether it's from my email that you guys send in stories to, which is LoeyLaneStorytime@gmail.com, by the way, if you want to send in any fun stories for me to chat about here on Terror Time, or just creepy stories that I find from across the internet. And I'm seriously so excited about this. I'm so dedicated to the idea of Terror Time that I literally bought an external mic for my camera for the first time so that the audio quality is really crisp and good on these videos. And so, welcome to Terror Time. I am your host, LoeyLane, and we are going to dive into all things truly terrifying together. Today's story is one that I originally heard in a scary Reddit iceberg, as uploaded to YouTube by the YouTuber Fortune. Fortune is like criminally small for how good his content is, so I'm gonna have his channel linked down below. If you like the story that I'm chatting about today, he reads stories like this in their entirety in his disturbing Reddit iceberg series. But today we are talking about easily the most disturbing post I've ever seen come from the r/relationship subreddit. A quick content warning before we get started. There is discussion of mental health, medication, and delusion/possible psychosis throughout this story, so viewer discretion is advised. This was from a throwaway account of a 32-year-old male who wanted to come to the r/relationship subreddit to talk about a really bizarre experience he was having with his wife. His wife, who is 30, has always been a bit of a prankster, kind of just like a jokey, silly kind of gal. And it's one of the many things that our poster loves about his wife. But now he believes that the joking has gone too far and that his wife is purposefully gaslighting him. There are no names in this particular story, so I'm going to call the poster John and his wife Jill. Hi, editing Low here. All of that was fine and good, except I changed John's name to Jack. I'm sorry, Jack and John are the same guy, same dude. It's like there were no names in the story. Like, I put the names in and I screwed it up. Like, I intentionally made it harder for myself. Anyway, all right, back to the story. John starts out his post by saying that he truly knows that he could just get ridiculed for everything he's about to say, but that he just doesn't know where else to go. He's always had a great relationship with his wife. They've been married for 6 years, and it's been a relatively happy marriage. You know, everybody kind of squabbles and, you know, gets into arguments and stuff, but mostly they're really happy with each other. And as I said, Jill, his wife, is definitely like a prankster in the relationship. She has what the poster can describe as a really good poker face, and also he says he himself is super gullible, so she'll always like pull jokes over on him, but at the end they just have a laugh together. And it's never been serious before now. So the original post was made in January, and back in December over Christmas, Jack's in-laws got the couple all of Battlestar Galactica on DVD. Jack's in-laws loved the show, but neither he or his wife had ever really given it a solid watch, and so of course they're gifted this set. However, Jack had to leave for a business trip on the 30th of December. And before this trip, his wife wasn't feeling well, and he wanted to spend his Christmas break with her anyways, so they just stayed home and basically marathoned the entire show over the course of a few days before he had to leave on the trip. The ending of the show, he kind of says, is like somewhat religious in tone. My dad loved Battlestar Galactica so much. I have his little bear back there, but that's just a Star Trek bear. He loved all things space, and I remember the show. I don't remember any religious aspects though, so that's kind of crazy. Regardless, the poster really liked the ending, while his wife thought it kind of ruined the whole show, was just a really bad show ending. I know a lot of people can be pretty divided on endings of TV shows. And I know you're sitting at home what does this have to do with anything? But for some reason, this was the catalyst of a pretty big fight between the two. It just turned into a really big argument where Jill could not believe that her husband didn't think that the ending ruined the entire show, while Jack was like, I mean, I think this was pretty consistent with the show up until this point. They just didn't see eye to eye on it, but it caused a really big fight. Such a big fight that she ended up leaving their room in the middle of the night, sleeping on the couch, and barely responding when he kissed her goodbye and said he loved her before he left for his business trip. We're fast forwarding to the Monday when Jack gets back from his business trip. Everything goes fine and he comes back to town, and Jack's friend comes to pick him up at the airport because there's a gym class that Jill just can't miss. This was kind of weird to Jack because while he was out of town, they had been texting. Jill kind of apologized for the way she had acted and just said, you know, things had been sort of tough. She wasn't feeling well. So he thought everything was back to normal, but her not picking him up at the airport was a little weird. Jack doesn't think about it much. He just honestly goes to bed the minute he gets home and somehow sleeps straight until morning. I guess he was just really tired and he said he couldn't sleep on the flight. So this is where things get weird. Jack wakes up bright and early in the morning and rolls over to give his wife a cuddle when he realizes she's not there. She's not in the room at all. In fact, the bed is empty. It's just Jack in the bed, which is weird because his wife is like a late riser. She's unemployed and stays at home, so she just tends to wake up a little bit later. My audio cut out here, but as it turned out, his wife was already in the kitchen cooking breakfast. He walks up behind his wife to say hello and give her a hug and a kiss, and she doesn't say much. She's just kind of like grunting in response. And he thinks this is weird, but she's like cooking breakfast, so maybe she's just really focused on that. Jack gets ready to go, you know, he's just going through his morning routine, getting ready to go to work because he doesn't really know what's going on, but clearly like something's a little off or he's just not like up to date on what's going on in his wife's life. So he's like, we'll just talk about it later. He gets ready for the day, and as he's leaving the kitchen, his wife stops him. This is when she hands him a brown paper bag and says, "It's cold out there. Better hoagie down." This was weird for a multitude of reasons. Number one, Jack's wife had like never packed him a lunch like this before. And number two, what is she talking about? It's cold out there, better hoagie down. Like this is never something either of them have ever said before. And so Jack kind of like takes the bag and he's just like, what? And instead of responding, his wife weirdly just walks to the bathroom, slams the door, and doesn't say anything. Now at this point, Jack is already going to be late for work. He's so confused as to what's going on. So he takes this bagged lunch with him to work and is just like, I guess I'll figure out what's going on later. He goes to a meeting the first thing when he gets to work, but it's all he can think about. All he can think about is like, what happened with my wife that she's this mad at me? Things were really weird. I'm really worried that I've upset her. So as soon as he's out of the meeting, he's sending her text messages like, hey, what was with the better hoagie down thing this morning? Like, are you okay? Are we good? Like, did I upset you? Like, what's going on? And his wife responds via text saying, please do not be this weird. You are being so weird. That never happened. I did not hand you a paper bag and say better hoagie down. Like, what are you talking about? Is this a joke? Jack is obviously confused, but his wife is like reassuring him. She says, you know, I love you. Everything's good with us. Like, I promise you, I'm not upset with you. You know, I think this must just be some really weird misunderstanding. And Jack's like, okay, if she's not mad at me, maybe something was lost in translation here. I'll figure it out when I get home. And he gets home and his wife is still just being really, really weird towards him. And at this point, he thinks that because she's like gone out of her way to be like, no, I love you, everything's good, this must just be like some kind of joke he doesn't fully understand. So he leaves it alone. And then it happens again and again and again. Every single morning for a week, as Jack is leaving home, Jill hands him a brown paper bag and says, it's cold out there, better hoagie down. Then she walks to the bathroom and slams the door, never responding to Jack when he tries to ask her what's going on. And if you're sitting there like, well, maybe she just made him a lunch. Maybe this is like all really like getting blown out of proportion. She was never even putting a hoagie or a sandwich of any kind in these bags, nor packing any sense of like a real lunch. One day it was 3 bananas, another day it was just a muffin, and every time she would hand over the bags, he said that it was just dead eyes staring back at him, just staring with nothing behind them. The day he's writing this post, he had finally had enough. And after she slammed the bathroom door, he stood there and knocked and pounded and said, please just tell me what's going on. Like, you're confusing me. What are you doing? And then every night when he gets home, it's the same conversation. That didn't happen. What are you talking about? Please stop doing this. Like, I did not do this to you. If you're making a joke to me, this is all Jill saying this, by the way, if you're making a joke towards me, like, knock it off because this isn't funny and you're creeping me out. Things just progressively have gotten worse over the course of the past week as well. In terms of, they're not even sleeping in the same bed as each other anymore. They're barely talking because every time they do, it's that one interaction in the mornings in which Jill tells Jack, it's cold out there, better hoagie down. And then at night when Jill basically acts like he's absolutely out of his mind. So there's not exactly a lot of healthy communication going on here. And Jack has started to really think like something might be seriously wrong here because this has been going on and going on. And then he overheard Jill like quietly talking to her mother about it on the phone. So he's really concerned about his marriage at the time of writing this initial post. This is where he turns it over to the audience of Reddit and says, is this some kind of joke? Do I not understand this? I think my wife is actually gaslighting me on purpose if it isn't a joke because like, I just don't know what any of this could mean. A bunch of people comment their theories and kind of suggestions to him and, you know, tell him, no, that definitely sounds like gaslighting. Like that's really, really, really weird. And he thanks them and says that he'll update when he can. And it's crazy because this entire string of events has been started by an argument over Battlestar Galactica. And it's gotten so intense. And I know that was a long setup, but here's where it all starts to get much weirder. When Jack comes back, there's a pretty big update. His wife has left. Jack took a nap and woke up with an absolutely monumental headache. And he's like getting out of bed and basically like making his way to the kitchen to go get something, like water, protein shake, something. He opens up the fridge to find it is like cleared out. Like everything is basically gone from it. He's calling for his wife. He's looking around. She's nowhere to be found. And as Jack is leaving his home, he spots a brown paper bag taped to the front door with the words, "It's cold out there, better hoagie down," written in cursive with like a Sharpie. He's so confused because there's like no food in the house. Once again, it's all been like cleared out for some reason. So he decides to check inside the brown paper bag and there's just a can of ginger ale inside for some reason. Jack goes outside and Jill's car is still there. It's like still where it should be, but her cell phone, her keys, her coat, her purse, all of that kind of stuff was gone. She does tend to take walks, so he assumed that could be where she was, but again, like why was the fridge cleared out? He can't get in touch with her. She's not picking up her phone. And then later he updates Reddit to say that he called her parents just to say, you know, do you know where Jill is? Because he hadn't seen her for a couple of hours at the point that he called them. And it sort of seemed like somebody had picked up by accident or something because all he could really hear were like arguing sounds that were sort of muffled and in the background. And then after 30 seconds of that, someone hung up. And Jack is so worried about his wife at this point, he decides to just head to his in-laws' house and says that he will update the post later. And on the way, he's just like really tired out of nowhere. And he chalks it up to stress. He's like, okay, I've just been really overwhelmed with this. Obviously things between my wife and I have been weird. At this point, Jack was only about an hour away from Jill's parents' house too, but he literally could not drive the rest of the way. He could not keep his eyes open. He just felt so weird. So he decided to pull over, stay at a motel for the night, and he would just go and talk to everyone in the morning because something just felt really, really, really weird. Before he goes to sleep at the motel, Jack is not feeling well, obviously. He's feeling really dizzy, he's feeling really weird, and he takes Benadryl regularly for allergies. So he pops a couple of them. And what Jack didn't know, what he couldn't know about the bottle of Benadryl that he had been taking multiple of for every single night in the last week, that Benadryl bottle wasn't Benadryl at all. The bottle was from his wife's side of the bed. When Jack originally came home from the business trip and went to sleep that first night that he was back, he and his wife's 3 cats were on his bed, and he knew that if he didn't take a Benadryl, he would have a reaction by the time that he woke up. He is pretty allergic to cats, and so he's apparently been taking more and more and more Benadryl with time, going from 1 pill to 2 2 pills to 4, up until the point where sometimes he will take 5 to 6 Benadryl a night. And so he's looking for his Benadryl, gonna take it before he goes to sleep. Again, this is the first night that he's back from his business trip. So he decides to go to his wife's side of the bed, and she has a little pink bottle of Benadryl right there. Except she was not storing Benadryl in that bottle because she didn't expect anyone else to be using it. She had Seroquel, antipsychotics, in that bottle. The Seroquel pills were pink. Of course, Jack didn't second guess what he was taking when he's taking pink pills out of a Benadryl bottle. He also didn't ask his wife about it because why would he? And everything that followed from that initial day when Jack came home, took all of those antipsychotics and then went to sleep, was about to be explained. Flashing forward again to the motel. Jack has spent the night, it's 9 a.m. and he's on his way to go see his in-laws and confront everybody and figure out what's going on, where is his wife, you know, what is happening here. When Jack arrives, his wife's car is there, which doesn't make any sense to him. I mean, he saw it at his place the day before. He gets out of his car, he goes up and rings the doorbell. And when Jill's father comes to the door, he's in for one hell of a sight. Jack was profusely sweating, shaking, and having an incredibly hard time speaking. His father-in-law had always just been so nice to him, had always been so friendly, and his demeanor now, a mixture of confusion and honestly fear, really worried Jack. Jack tries his best to explain the situation. He pulls the brown paper bag out from his pocket, which he had crumpled up. He tries to show him videos on his phone that he had taken of pounding on the bathroom door, telling his wife, you know, come out, like, what is going on? Why do you keep doing this every single morning? But the video doesn't exist. It's not on his phone. And his father-in-law is just getting more confused. And finally, Jill comes to the door. She's just looking so sad, so upset. And she's asking Jack, what are you doing here? And that's when Jack finds out that he has been terrorizing his own wife in their own home for an entire week. Jack didn't understand. What do you mean terrorizing you? I would never, ever do anything to upset or hurt you. And that's when Jill pulls her phone out of her pocket and shows Jack a video of himself banging, screaming at the bathroom door. And she's filming all of this from behind the couch, watching him absolutely terrified. After all, she's just sitting there as he screams at her to come out right now from inside of the bathroom. So of course she's scared. Of course she doesn't know what's going on. She even shows him another video of him getting ready for work, except he's just standing comatose in the kitchen, looking at nothing, saying nothing, doing nothing. There was another video of him in which he was really angry and rude towards her after work one day, which he had no recollection of. And as it turned out, his wife had left days prior. He had been in his home, basically hallucinating this entire event for 2 days. And Jack's just like, no, this doesn't make any sense. It's cold out there, better hoagie down, remember? Like, what are you talking? Like, none of this makes any sense. So he's going through his phone, he's like, no, I can show you the photos of the bags, I can show you all of this. And all that's in his camera roll are weird photos of his feet and really blurry images that seem like he was trying to take a photo of something, but moved the camera too quickly. At this point, Jack absolutely loses it. And I think that anybody would. He just falls into a heap. He's sobbing hysterically. He doesn't know what to think. He doesn't even feel like himself in this moment. And how did this happen? Why would he ever act like that towards his wife? He describes his feeling now as not knowing which way is up and which way is down, as feeling dizzy and not quite nauseous, but also just not right. He couldn't really sit still. And at this point, an ambulance was called. On the entire way to the hospital and then during his stay there, Jack wasn't really able to speak much. He couldn't form sentences. He couldn't get much out. And they pumped him full of Ativan and he passed out for like 5 to 6 hours. Finally, he comes to and they're able to do an initial assessment of him. You know, when you go into a hospital and they have to figure out like why you're there, what happened, what medications have you been taking, etc. He was in no place to answer those questions prior to his rest. So once he's up, they're asking him all these questions, he's answering, and then they get to the medication. And he says, you know, I take Benadryl and I take Benadryl a lot. I'll take like 5 to 6 Benadryl. And he looks at his wife and he's like, and I've been taking the Benadryl from your side of the bed because I completely blew through mine. And his wife realizes what has happened, that her husband, who's never had any kind of diagnosed mental disorders, but as we'll find out later, does have some that run in his family, has been taking 6 antipsychotics a day. The doctors still didn't really have a full explanation as to what exactly this all was, because they're not really studying people who are taking insane dosages of medicine that they're not supposed to be taking. But the best guess that they have is that the Seroquel triggered some kind of underlying schizophrenia or mental illness that he didn't know that he had. And in that moment, they asked him, you know, do you have any mental illnesses that run in your family? And he says, I mean, not that I know of. But his wife wound up calling his parents after all of this, who said that his grandfather did have a really, really weirdly bad temper. His grandfather also experienced delusions from time to time, and his mother said he would often just like wake up in the middle of the night and start rambling to himself, or it was all just like kind of standard signs of what the doctors believed could be undiagnosed schizophrenia. And at this point, Jack says he's going to see a psychiatrist, of course, after this, figure out if there are any underlying medical issues, but for the most part, that it seems like everything has finally been resolved. What he was experiencing with his wife every single morning, handing him that brown paper bag, saying a nonsense statement, and then going and locking herself in the bathroom, yeah, none of it was real. It was all in his head. And he was petrified, but so was his wife, who had been essentially going through hell for the last week with her husband, who she loved very much, but was scaring the crap out of her. She did not know that he was just taking antipsychotics from her side of the bed. She thought he was like on some kind of crazy drugs probably, or at the very least, like being just weird, like towards her, trying to gaslight her, which is crazy because this whole post started out with Jack saying that he thought his wife was gaslighting him. I wish I could say it was a happy ending from here, that Jack and his wife just went back to normal and it was like this never happened. Maybe they would even rewatch Battlestar Galactica, even though they knew the questionably bad ending. But Jill was really freaked out. I mean, she had been through a lot in this last week, a lot that nobody could really understand. Even Jack, who had been there but had not been conscious for most of it really in his right mind. So she decided that she wanted his brother to kind of look after him while he got his diagnosis, while he got on medication and stuff, because something seemed to have really been triggered in Jill where she just didn't feel safe around him anymore. And she didn't seem mad at him. She seemed understanding, but she was just terrified, and Jack fully understood. And so this final post was made when he was in the hospital getting ready to kind of recover from this insanely traumatic event. He apologizes to the people of Reddit for wasting their time or confusing them. But he's also like, where did I get the phrase better hoagie down? Like seriously, where did I get the phrase better hoagie down? Like he says that he was listening to the radio a lot, so maybe it just like came up. But when you Google this statement, it doesn't exactly come up with a lot of stuff. From there, it's anyone's guess what happened in the end. But I like to think that Jack and Jill found a bit of peace with each other and within their own relationship, because it seemed like they had such a happy marriage before this entire event. And I really hope it was not enough to take them out. Still, what a crazy thing to happen. I had to tell this story, especially as my first terror time here on YouTube, because oh my God, have you ever heard anything that crazy in your entire life, anything that scary? Imagine having like this wild experience in which you totally feel like you're in your right mind like that, only to realize it is a delusion. And I guess I say imagine, but there are people who can imagine it. I struggle with my mental health as well, and I am diagnosed with mental health disorders, but I've always been really lucky that like I've never had to experience, I guess, like a full-blown delusion like that. I've hallucinated things before, but only only ever like bugs. I've seen like bugs when I'm in a really weird state of mind or like really stressed out or really tired. Sometimes I'll see like spiders and other bugs, which is really creepy. And I know they're not real, by the way, because when I smush them, they multiply. It's a bad time for everyone involved. But going through something like this is so terrifying. And I just had to share the story with all of you. What do you think about this? Also, how do you feel about Terror Time now that we've done our very first episode? I really hope you all enjoyed. I want to say a big thank you to my subscribers who are members of this channel. Thank you all so much for supporting me here on YouTube. And if you ever want to join the channel memberships, you should find the join button right next to the subscribe button. It's a great place to find friends and community, but I also post members only videos, as well as giving you other members only perks, including updates, polls to help me decide on future videos, and much more. So click that little join button somewhere around the screen. We would love to have you. For now, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love you very, very much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!